DW Africa Link.
I dream of traveling across Africa, tasting the food, feeling the music, meeting the incredible people. But you know what's stopping me in my tracks? The visa. Even with a Ghanaian passport, I still have to apply, wait, and sometimes get rejected just to visit countries on my own continent. So here's the big question. Will visa-free travel across Africa ever become a reality? That's what's coming up. I am Eddy Micah Jr., and you are welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
The African Union's Free Movement Protocol was supposed to be the game changer, the legal foundation for a visa-free continent, guaranteeing every African the right to enter, live, and work across borders while supporting the African Continental Free Trade Area. But you know what's been in short supply? Political will. That's why former Ghanaian Member of Parliament Ras Mubarak decided to take matters into his own hands. He traveled through 31 African countries in over 160 days. It was part of the Trans-Africa Tourism and Unity campaign, pushing for visa-free travel across the continent by 2030. Joining me now is Ras Mubarak himself, along with my colleague and DW correspondent in Accra, Ghana, Adwoa Tenkoramaa, Domena. Hello and welcome to Africa Link. Ras, you've been out and about. How does it feel to be back home?
Oh my, the feeling is exhilarating. Haven't missed my family for 160 days or 5 months. So you can imagine, how it felt to see the kids. But, they do understand that this is in the service of Africa. And we are quite excited to be in familiar territory. It's been a very difficult journey, but a necessary journey for the prosperity of Africa. So we are very happy to have done that in the service of Mother Africa.
160 days on the road. You did not fly to any African country. You went all by road?
We did 28 days by road exclusively. And because we had an accident in Zambia and lost time because our vehicle needed to be fixed over a period of 3 weeks, we needed to fly to Morocco. And then, unfortunately, Morocco and Algeria have closed their borders, their land borders, so you can't even drive, to either country. And there's even a no-fly zone between the two countries. So what it meant was that we had to fly out of Africa to move from one neighboring country to the other. So out of 31 countries, we did 3 countries that were by air as a result of exigencies beyond our control.
Right. And from my understanding, the earlier plan was to do 39 countries, but you could only complete 31. Why is that exactly?
Absolutely. The earlier plan was to do 39 countries, but we had a very serious accident in Zambia, that derailed the campaign for 3 weeks. And what it meant was that we had lost time, and it was going to take us a longer time, to drive all the way to North Africa. And so we needed to fly to Morocco, engage with officials, and then also fly to Algeria, because Morocco and Algeria have both closed their land borders and have imposed a no-fly zone on each other. And so even if we had driven to one country, it would have been difficult to go to the other by land. And from Algeria, we had to fly all the way to Senegal because Mauritania had refused us visas. The plan was to drive on the west coast of Africa from the north downward via Mauritania, then Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Ivory Coast, and Ghana. But unfortunately, they had refused us visas, and we didn't have an option than to fly over Mauritania into Senegal and then continue the journey back home in Accra.
Right. And this is exactly why you're pushing for visa-free Africa. Tell us really, who cares?
Well, all African nationals have to care, because our inability to move freely across the continent of Africa inhibits our ability to create wealth amongst our African people. The plan is to get Africa to be completely visa-free so that no African is required or asked, to submit a visa or apply for a visa before they can access one African country or the other. And we sincerely believe that by opening up, we would be able to create a lot of jobs for African youth. And don't forget that Africa has a very huge youthful population, and there's a greater need to create opportunities for young Africans. And then you're also looking at the trade component. I mean, if people can't move, if goods can't move, it's difficult to create prosperity. And then you're looking at intra-Africa tourism, because we've had instances where, the entire world is shut down, or some parts of the world is shut down, and we have had difficulties in getting tourism numbers. I'll give you quick examples. There are a lot of hotels in Africa that close down completely whenever, we are out of the holiday season in Europe. So if it is not winter, you don't get a lot of people, coming to places like the Gambia to explore. And so there's a greater need to create an all year round, tourism culture where you promote intra-Africa travel. And indeed, Africa is very, very beautiful, I must say. The tourism market is so huge. It's over, it's into trillions of dollars. And there's no reason why Africa should not be tapping into it at full throttle.
There's a lot more work to be done to make visa-free a reality. And to some, it's not even just about making it visa-free, as much as that would help with movement across the continent. Adwoa, our correspondent on it right now, it's about the money, right? Even if it's visa-free and Adwoa doesn't have the money, will Adwoa be able to afford going to other countries, whether it's by car or by flight? What would you say to someone like Adwoa?
Well, so one of the things, Africa is extremely expensive. The flight tickets are outrageous. And incidentally, flights that are run by African carriers are more expensive than flights that are run from out of Africa. And that's how come we ended up in Paris before returning to Africa from Morocco. And so there's got to be a big conversation about how do we make travel simpler, easier, without hassle, but also to the ordinary African, who's just a student, who doesn't have 1,000 bahts or euros, to buy a ticket from, say, Ghana to Senegal, or from Eswatini to, say, Nairobi. Airport taxes would have to come down. And then we believe that by opening up where you would have a lot of numbers coming through, that is when it would drive down the prices of tickets. But also, hotels are extremely expensive in Africa. And so, governments would have to put in place some tax breaks, tax measures to make sure that hotel owners are incentivized, to keep prices down, to attract more and more people into these hotels. If we're able to do this, and if we're able to have a visa-free policy, and I believe this is possible within the next 4 years. Rwanda is visa-free for all African nationals in spite of its geographical location. Because one of the arguments against opening up is that, well, there are security concerns, people are going to come and commit crime, etc. We say, look at Rwanda. Rwanda is sandwiched between Burundi and DRC. DRC has packets of conflict situation, yet Rwanda says all Africans can come in. What African governments need to do is to put in place, strong biometric systems, is to use new technology, share intelligence, drones, etc., to combat crime. But also, even when you open up and you don't put in place the infrastructure, it becomes excruciatingly frustrating. I'll give you a typical example. There have been places we have had to spend about 5 hours at the border just waiting to cross. Tanzania-Zambia border, we spent 5 hours because the system was down. The electronic system that would have allowed authorities to go through our documents was down, and we had to wait. It happened at the border between Kenya and Uganda, at the Busia border. On the Kenyan side of the border, we had to wait for about 3 hours and 49 minutes. So if you open up and you don't put in place the infrastructure, you're back to square one.
You're 100% right. And this is exactly the reason people may not be too optimistic about it, because it looks like such a Herculean task. But let me bring in Adwoa, because I like the way you're going, Ras, and we're going to come back to you for more solution-oriented ways to move forward. Adwoa, what do you make of all of this, and how has it been received generally in Ghana, for example?
I think it's a great move. For me as an African, in fact, I was, having a conversation with my sister about visa-free movement, across Africa. And when she heard it, she was very excited because, she said, I have a few countries that I want to visit. But if this campaign will really work, then it means that I can travel, across Africa without having to worry about the stress that comes with visa. So for me as a person, that's a positive, feedback from somebody who genuinely wants to travel, who genuinely wants to see the continent, but, it's limited by resources, it's limited by all of the bureaucratic, processes you have to go through just to travel. The other thing that, I've picked up in the last couple of days is that we all know that this American streamer, iShowSpeed, has been across Africa. And when I join the live streams and I see some of the comments, what I see running through is that a lot of Africans don't even have the exposure of how the continent looks like beyond their own borders. So if somebody is pushing for something of this sort, indeed it's a welcome news for a lot of people. Eddy.
One of the challenges for many is how slow a pace this is all going. The AU has an agenda, that's the African Union, has an agenda 2063, where it expects visa-free movement across the continent. I mean, isn't that too far off, Adwoa?
Well, to a lot of people it is, and really, you are not even sure if we'll be able to meet this target within this set time. What is the challenge? Is it that African countries are showing resistance when it comes to opening up their borders? Is it that the AU, has a certain strategy it is using, for which reason it is taking this long? But I do also know that for somebody like Ras Mubarak, he thinks this period is way too long, and so he believes that this can be achieved in the next 5 years.
Thanks, Adwoa. Ras, over to you. Adwoa just passed the ball to you, and I'm also curious to find out. I mean, why will the AU be looking at such a far date as 2063? Why not sooner?
Exactly. Why not now? 2063 is about 40 years from now. And imagine a person who is in their 30s in, Nairobi or DRC or Ghana. Add another 40 years to their life. They'll be well, into their 70s, approaching 80. What we are pushing for is the fact that we need to accelerate, that vision to make it happen in the, shortest possible time. I mean, there has been a lack of political will by many governments in Africa to have this happen, probably because the argument has not been made sufficiently enough, probably because there has not been a lot of pressure from ordinary citizens who have to demand that they want to be able to travel freely within their own continent. A lot of Africans don't know how the continent looks like. Visa fees are expensive. I mean, we had had to pay visa fees as much as $250 per head. I mean, this is too much for, a graduate who just want to go to the neighboring country, to explore how beautiful that place is, or to see to have a taste of the cuisine. So I believe what all ordinary Africans should be doing is to be demanding of their leadership that we want to be able to travel within our own continent. And there's no better time than now, when the rules-based order has been thrown to the dogs, when there are more and more restrictions on Africans traveling to other continents. And I see it as a blessing in disguise. Africans have got to, seize the moment while the sun is still up and say that, look, how can we make it easier for our people to access the rest of Africa? Africa has 54 countries. And if you are from one of the countries in Africa and you're able to, have access to, 53 other countries, that's a plus. Don't forget, this conversation didn't start today. It was on Nkrumah, Modibo Keita, Sekou Touré, and others who started this in the 60s, way before the European Union project started in the 70s. The EU has seen the enormous benefits that are inherent in mobility and have run with it. And their people are happy. I mean, you can have access to all the countries within, the single market within the Schengen area, and people can actually move and resettle from one place to the other.
Is there a feeling from your side that because the AU has the date of 2063, that is not giving it some sense of urgency? I assume that's where you're coming from. But also there are those that say you're talking about it being done in 5 years. That's also not realistic, is it?
Well, that is. I mean, Kenya last year announced that all African nationals can come in without the requirement of visas. And again, I would cite Rwanda as an example. Rwanda has risen from the ashes. Look at what they've gone through, in the 90s, almost 1 million of their citizens, killed, with the country destroyed in a conflict. And in spite of that checkered history, have risen from the ashes and doing very well. What excuse does Ghana or Sierra Leone or, Nigeria or Equatorial Guinea or some other country have not to, be on the right side of history? Because history, I have said repeatedly, would be kind to African leaders who make it happen.
Totally hear your point. Ghana is among a select few.
Ghana is not entirely visa-free at the moment. Ghana has indicated that all Africans can come in with visa on arrival. And we are saying we don't even need Africans asking other Africans to acquire visas before they can access this beautiful continent. The thing is, we're charging our African brothers and sisters $200 to come into our country. That is what we're doing. Others are charging us $250 just to go to their countries. That is what we are doing to ourselves as Africans. And I think in an era where, it's becoming more and more difficult to access other continents, we have to look within and see how we can make it easier for our people to trade amongst ourselves, to travel amongst ourselves, amongst our countries, and to exchange, cultures, etc. This is something that would create prosperity for our African people without a doubt.
Understood. You're set to present your report to President John Mahama. What are the key recommendations you're going to share with him to sort of act on this visa-free travel immediatly?
Well, we recommended that there's got to be, an acceleration. We have to accelerate visa harmonization. That is a commitment to full ratification and implementation of AU protocols on, free movement of persons, by the year 2028. We are hoping that we would enhance border efficiency and integrity. You go to some borders, if they are not extorting money from you, you are spending 3, 4, 5 hours in some cases just because systems are down. And then also infrastructure. And this is where the African Development Bank comes in, for instance, because the AFDB, apart from, supporting African integration, supports infrastructure. And I believe that the bank could be called upon, to support the infrastructure. And we're not just talking about roads, but infrastructure at the point of entry.
Adwoa, do you get a sense that Ghana's government is ready to take Ras Mubarak's report seriously and act on visa-free travel ASAP?
Well, if anything, Shamima Muslim, who is a deputy presidential spokesperson, said we can go by that, then it means that the government is committed. to ensuring that some of the suggestions from Ras Mubarak's trip are inculcated in Ghana's own agenda, because we do know that President Mahama, as Chamima said, is, ECOWAS's, candidate for AU chairmanship, and a lot is at stake. The AU itself, has an agenda of its own. And I believe that if Ghana is making a push for the cutting down of the years from 2063 to say 2030, then on that front, Ghana, if President Mahama is able to assume the AU chairmanship, Ghana can make that push on a continental level, which is, good for the country. We also know that the chief of staff lent his support to the campaign even before they left from Ghana. So there's that, understanding. The foreign minister has also, assured that he is willing to offer support, and I'm sure that Ras, was given a lot of support, in getting the diplomatic engagement he got on all the countries that he visited. So the government has shown enough commitment, from what I can see as a journalist, to this free visa agenda.
Right. Thank you very much, Adwoa. Ras, in your final words, remind us why this is such a great idea, that it's jumped on ASAP. I mean, we're talking education, entertainment, businesses, you name them.
I mean, in the spirit of Kwame Nkrumah's visionary call for United Africa, we decided to do this on our own, with the full endorsement of the government of Ghana, to traverse our beautiful continent. Even when we started the campaign, people said, you guys are going to get killed, Africa is not safe, and all of that. But we have done 160 days. And I say to people that, look, no country is perfect. And indeed, no continent is perfect. Every continent has their own set of challenges. We have got to do everything possible to make Africa work. So this would be in the overall benefit of Africa, because it's going to stimulate the economies of the respective African countries. It's going to lead to the generation of revenue for government through tourism, taxes, etc. More importantly, a lot of young people, are looking for jobs in Africa. Our generation is the most educated generation of all time.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Adwoa, it looks like Mubarak for president, or?
Oh, Eddy. Well, I think this is a campaign that a lot of Ghanaians are interested in. And it's not just, it's not a political agenda, at least from where I sit. And it's a move that if every Ghanaian, if every African should get involved, it will greatly help the continent. So good move for Africa.
Okay. Cool. That's been a very interesting discussion. And I do hope our leaders, our politicians, those in authority, that they are listening. And hopefully sooner than later, this will not just be a dream, reality on the ground. Ras Mubarak, former member of parliament in Ghana and leader of the Trans-Africa Tourism and Unity Campaign, which is a team pushing for a visa-free Africa. Thank you very much for your time. Also, DW correspondent in Accra, Ghana, Adwoa, Tenkoramaa, Domena. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddy.
Ras Mubarak set out to prove what's possible, but also to expose just how difficult intra-African travel remains. His journey revealed a sobering reality. Many Africans find it easier to travel outside the continent than within it. So clearly, something has to change. Visa-free Africa isn't about erasing borders. It's about tearing down unnecessary barriers. The problem isn't a lack of vision, it's a lack of urgency. Nearly half of all Africans still need visas to travel within their own continent. The African Union's Free Movement Protocol has been sitting on the table since 2018, yet only 4 countries have ratified it. The promises are stuck at the border. It's time for African countries to move from speeches to action and truly open Africa to Africans. What do you think? Share your thoughts with us on Facebook at DW Africa. Catch us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe. And I am Eddy Micah Jr. Thanks for listening.
DW. Made for minds.